The subjects what are available for an activity is endless.
Oh, I enjoyed them very much indeed. As a matter of fact, it brought back memories I thought had completely non-existent.
It makes it easy to see someone as a person.
It's a way that you can actually learn to communicate with them, finding out what there has been in their past and building on that.
You get to know other people's stories and their type of life, what they're doing, and I think you can learn quite a bit from it.
Reminiscence work is a way of encouraging older people to talk about the past with a view to sharing memories and developing a more complete understanding of an individual life.
Bloomfield Road.
Oh, yes.
Bloomfield Road, yes. The good school.
Yes.
Yes. The buses used to run up there, but I never got on the bus.
No.
I always walked.
I always walked to school. I wasn't far enough for a bus.
Millmead Linked Service Centre provides a wide range of care for older people, including care at home. Gary Baker runs the Reminiscence Loan Service at Millmead. His work is built into the daily life of the centre. The aim is to enable people to get to know each other and to communicate their needs and preferences as a basis for providing sensitive and appropriate care.
The thing what I like about Reminiscence is all for the bad side and the negative side and the upsetting and all that, to see someone actually creating something in their later life or in the workshop area or the activity room, or actually talking about the good old days, if there was such thing, to see something happening, you know, and it's a positive, and they're talking about, and they're laughing, and I think that's good, and I think it's and if you work on that, I think you're doing something right, and it's got to be better than playing bingo 5 days a week. It's got to be.
I have a lot of responsibilities as services manager for the whole range of ensuring quality services are provided for, whether it's elderly clients, disabled, mentally handicapped clients, whatever. And Reminiscence plays a very key feature in our services with elderly. It's important that people working with the elderly actually see them as individuals in their own rights. And through Reminiscence, you can actually see the individual as a whole. Past history of them, what they've been doing in their life in the past, can actually affect how they are now. And in finding out about that, then there's a way of actually communicating with them.
I haven't been here that long, but I've been able to walk much better, mix with people. I hadn't been out for a year. No. I had a lot of, illness in and out of hospital, which was quite new to me, because up till now I'd been very lucky and I hadn't had any of the illnesses or anything. So it's quite a new experience. Staff are good, they help you all they can. I quite enjoy it.
The Reminiscence is quite often for people who've lived alone. It's their first encounter with a large group of people for a long time.
It's nice to talk to people. I live alone, and I'm alone quite a lot, so I don't have people to speak to. Friends pop in, of course, yes.
Well, it's a good way of actually getting to know a resident. I mean, everybody can reminisce about the past, obviously, because we've all got things that's happened to the past. I mean, if we're meeting clients for the first time, to try and get some input about their background, what they did work-wise, we try to reminisce, and by asking questions, certain dates, can they remember what they did? It depends as well on actually how well the client is. If they've got a disability, as you can imagine, some of them can't express themselves as well as others, but most of them, I'd say 99%, even with disabilities, can actually reminisce about something, and it's a good basis to actually get a relationship with a client, and they feel, I think, they're actually putting something back into society by telling you things that you obviously don't know yourself. I wasn't around most of the things that happened to them in their lives, so it's a very, you know, interesting relationship.
Do you remember your first job, Annie?
Oh, yes.
What was that?
I went to do some housework, mainly to do the breakfast for an old lady who had 2 boarders. And I had to be there by 8 o'clock in the morning. Had to walk and do the breakfast for them. And then I used to do the bedrooms, and I was finished.
Was
and I
you
got 10
14 then?
shillings a week for that.
10?
10 shillings a week
10 shillings.
for
And
that.
how old were you?
I was 14.
And how long did you do that for?
Oh, not long.
Not long.
No. Then I went to London.
And what happened then?
Oh.
Whoa! Were the streets paved with gold, or?
Well, there was a friend and I both went, and we were sort of house parlour maids, and her relations lived at Woolwich. So we went out one night to meet the relations, and of course we were a bit late coming in. We weren't allowed to go up the front steps, we had to go to the basement, and all the milk bottles were put out side the door, and we knocked them all over, and we got the sack for that. Yes.
A reminiscence session may include people with a range of disabilities, and each with their own particular contribution to make to the group. At the end of each session, Gary makes a record of what happened to pass on to other members of the care staff. In this way, the reminiscence links directly to other areas of work in the unit.
I normally put the session book in the reminiscence room, and if anybody's about, I should say, well, this is what took part today. Would you like to know what they used to got up to when they was at school? And it's freely available if they want to see it. And also I go back to the team leader or Mark to let him know how the session went. And also to follow up if there was any sign of trauma or any upsetting in the group. To have that link really in the office and to let them know what's going on.
We can actually read about our clients, all confidential as you can imagine, and then there's certain things down there that we know about them, and then I can take that and then go on into the session with them and actually talk about things that I know they've got, you know, an interest in, and hopefully they can give me things and I can give them things back.
When someone is admitted to Millmead, Mark Blake, the unit manager, collects the basic information necessary on an admission form from the older person or a relative.
We use them to gather information. Basic admission form, where we take basic details of our clients, starting with name, date of birth, marital status and their home address. We then move into things like their ethnic origin, their next of kin if that's possible, if there's a main contact person. We then have information about care managers, doctors and any relevant medical information we need to know. We also take a personal description of the person and any other general information that we feel is relevant. This sheet is basically a little checklist for us. We can mark on here any relevant details. If perhaps someone's had an operation recently and it's something that we need to be aware of, we can mark it on the form, and it just helps us to build a better picture of the whole person, both physically and mentally.
This is a life story book that Lil Kavanagh made me. She was evacuee during World War II. It's funny that we've got members of staff on the floor who were actually evacuated during the war as well. So that's a value information to share their experiences. Staff normally try to look at the old evacuee stories because it's shared information that they've experienced and for them. Also, the values of life story books is really that you get background information that you wouldn't do normally on a normal booking in form. Was you allowed sweets at school?
No.
No?
No.
Right, I'm going to offer some of these round because
They were taken away from us and put in the wastepaper basket.
Were they really?
Yes.
Never allowed sweets in school.
You wasn't allowed sweets in school?
No.
Does anybody know what these are?
Yes, the violet scented.
That's right. Do you want to pass them round, Mel? Do you remember those?
I remember the sweetlet Do you remember the pink twiglet?
No.
I remember talking to the your pocket.
Yeah?
Gary's reminiscence boxes are at the heart of each session. Objects collected and organised around themes are brought out to stimulate memories and encourage discussion.
This is the heart of the centre. It's took about 6 years to sort these boxes out. This is a sweetie box, and it's a funny box to have for a reminiscence, but we all have sweets from school days and things like that. Even I remember Love Arts, and even violets. You know, that's a memorabilia for even for residents. What we've got here, you know, everybody remembers those. And it's just an easy box to make. You just pop down and get yourself some fruit salads or lollipops, and they eat the contents of the box. You have to watch out for a diabetic and make sure that no one has got any dietary troubles or anything like that, so you don't want to cause any problems in that way. But because the box goes out, everything has to be destroyed by eating, so you restock the box, and it's quite an enjoyable box. Sweet memories. Just like to show you another box. This one's quite good for visually impaired people. I made this box. I know you can buy these boxes variously from different companies, but I made this one, and it's 35mm film canisters, and a lot of chemists or photo developers just throw these away. I know they're recyclable, but you just get someone to type a label up there for yourself, stick it on there, and the contents is inside. This one is pipe tobacco, and with just the smell, it's just like that. That's Errinmore, and that just reminds me of my uncle smoking pipe. See, that's the power of reminiscence.
65 years ago.
See, so you remember that well. And George made that rhyme about his headmaster, so that's sort of
Put your finger through there and push it down.
That's right. And then you put it through there.
You managed there, George, all right?
Yeah. I'll put my money in one hand.
Put your money in one hand and the yo-yo in the other. There we go.
Can't you put something here?
So, saying about that,
Yeah.
children's playground, I suppose hopscotch was one of them as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, hopscotch.
And how about one of these things?
Oh, yeah.
The old whipping top?
Spinning top. Spinning top. It's not a humming top. No. Spinning top.
Spinning top?
Well, a humming top's done this way, isn't it?
Oh,
Press
did they?
down. There's a humming top.
Oh, I think I've got one of those.
What?
One like this. Is that the one?
There are budgets to run the service. We've just been through a recent budget exercise, and all the time you're trying to ensure that your services are cost effective. But we've actually found at minimal cost, in a way, that I think last year there was a budget of about £1,000 is all that Gary had, and we'd look to have that again this year and build upon that. And it's worked okay.
You're supposed to leave at 14, but as my father lost his job just before then, I had to stay out at school because he wouldn't get any door for me. And then when you were 15, you had to leave, so I had to go to what they called it an instruction centre, but we called it the door school. We had to go there before he got any money for us. But I've been there a few weeks and I got a job as a tailoress. And I was lucky because then you had to pay if you were apprentice.
Yes.
But I got paid.
Yes.
So I was a tailoress until the war started, and I went in the army.
How long was your apprenticeship for?
Well, about 6 months or so.
You didn't have like what they've got now at school, like work experience. You just left school.
No,
and
he just
dropped in.
the tailor just showed you how to do.
How did you feel like when you was leaving school one minute and then starting work? Terrible?
I'm a bit worried. Before I went into that, see about the job, I walked up and down.
Did you?
I was dead good.
Were you nervous?
Well, I got it anyhow.
I've had some bad sessions and some good sessions, and I think you've got to accept that when you're doing reminiscence work, that you are going to find a case where you're going to have someone really upset, because we've all got a memory which we try to forget, which is upsetting.
Oh no, well, you have to face up to the truth, haven't you? I mean, it's a fact. If it's happened in the past, it's happened, and I don't think it's bad at all to reminiscence and remember. Makes you appreciate how good it is living today.
I think 2 or 3 ladies, and it was quite nice to see, because obviously the lady was in some distress and she was trying to wipe her eyes because she was crying a bit, and the two ladies opposite was holding her hand. And I think even though I'm in like the centre of the room trying to do the session, it was nice to see two other people in the same experiences I thought that they might have shared during the war.
What did they get them into then?
Brass screws.
They used to, where they would knock around. You could, surprised in how far you could skate a cigarette card.
And the winner, I suppose, would have kept all the cards, would they?
Yeah, and who the winner would be the mad bloke who collected most of the screws.
Are you saying that, like, who would give you the actual cards? Your dad, or would it have been, because obviously you wouldn't have been around the bicycle shed knocking out a packet of cigarettes to get these cards?
No,
or who would have gave you the actual cards? Relatives or anywhere?
All my brothers used to smoke.
Oh yeah, they used to give you the cards?
No, I never smoked in my life.
No?
Not even now.
It gives them a chance to perhaps build a relationship with someone, which is something that they're not doing if they're on their own, to build some trust and then get the chance to communicate. Perhaps they have unresolved feelings about events in their lives, and they can actually talk about those with another human being rather than just sit and contemplate them themselves for hours on end.
I think in making the contacts that Gary has, he's gone outside and it is publicised in that way. So some of our colleagues in the private sector, some of the local schools who are part of it, they've had access to the information. It's gone to local museums, and there's also been a recent project where he worked on a scheme that went up to, I think, the Imperial War Museum. And that was, I came in to see the people while they were working on the project, and the enthusiasm was not only there with Gary, but with the different people there. There was about 8 to 10 people working on it, and that you could see they were actually enjoying that as well.
Now, according to your life storybook, George, you've got a little a rhyme here about Mr. Cook.
Oh, Mr. Cook's a very good man, tries to teach us all he can. Reading, writing and arithmetic, and never forgets to give us the stick.
How many times did you have that?
None.
Oh, right.
This is the story of an institution, a community cut off from the everyday world, Lennox Castle Hospital. It's also an introduction to a research method, oral history, which explores the lives of ordinary people. The researcher is Howard Mitchell.
I was very interested in why people performed in certain ways within the institution, why people followed certain regimes, where these regimes came from, why people were reluctant to break with practices which were sometimes looked upon as unnecessary and cruel, and how the community served to perpetuate these practices in many ways. And by interviewing and analysing that material, I think I've been able to get an insight into the psychology of how a community works.
Lennox Castle Hospital lies on extensive grounds at the foot of the Campsie Fells. It was built by Glasgow Corporation and opened officially in 1936. It was designed to be more or less self-contained, with accommodation for over 1,200 men and women with learning disabilities from the city of Glasgow. At the time it was opened, it was regarded as the most advanced of its type, both in terms of its design and operating policies. But now it is the subject of a closure programme. Howard Mitchell is very much an insider. For a number of years, the hospital included a maternity unit serving the population outside. Howard was born there and later went back to work as a nurse in the 1970s.
One of the first pieces of documentary evidence I looked at when I came to the records here in Lennox Castle, It's a Lennox Castle Maternity Hospital admissions book, and we have in the 25th of June 1955 Mitchell, male, born in the hospital. Well, it actually says nature of illness, born in hospital, but this is in actual fact my record of birth, proving that I am very much an insider to the institution.
Howard's method of research involves combining material located in the various archives with extensive interviewing of people who lived and worked in the hospital over the years. But first, what kind of place was Lennox Castle?
Typical tree-lined drive. You could be forgiven for thinking it was the entrance to one of the Victorian asylums of the 19th century, the mock stately homes for the mentally ill. In fact, Lennox Castle was very much a 20th century hospital, purpose built in a dormitory or villa system, where each villa is self-contained for 60 residents and patients. 20 of these villas, 10 for men, 10 for women.
In the past, people with learning disability were generally put in poorhouses, workhouses, or psychiatric institutions. However, at the beginning of this century, a fear grew that so-called feeble-minded people were, by interbreeding with the rest of the population, weakening the nation's physical and moral stock. The Royal Commission on Care and Control of the Feeble-Minded was followed by the 1913 Mental Deficiency Act. This allowed for the building of separate hospitals to keep people with learning disability from mixing with the general population. Such was Lennox Castle. "500 yards from the patients' villas, there was staff accommodation. In the early years, it was against hospital policy to employ local people. This helped keep the hospital isolated from society at large. Colin Sproul was unemployed in Glasgow in 1937 when he heard there might be work at Lennox Castle. He stayed for 38 years.
No, I went in to see a man in municipal buildings, and he said to me, "Do you not fancy going to Lennox Castle to work? I'm ill nurse." So I did that. That was in May 1937.
And did you fill in an application form?
Oh, yes.
And they presumably taken for interview?
Yes, I
Can
was
you
interviewed.
remember your interview?
Chief male nurse interviewed me. And
Just him by himself?
Yes. And he asked me if I could play football. And that was young. He was very keen on football and had a great team.
This is the site for one of the 3 top-class football pitches. Football and other sports loomed large in the lives of staff and patients. Sport helped foster a sense of identity and community. Checking out the history of the hospital, Howard looked through the collection of photographs held in the local history library at nearby Kirkintillich. There are scarcely any pictures of the hospital and its daily life in the collection, probably because taking photographs was regarded as a breach of confidentiality. One exception was the hospital's football team.
The one picture we do have in the archives here giving any idea of the life of the staff and the patients is this one of the football team, the Lennox Castle 11, who met the Celtic A team in February 1937 to open the football pitch there. In the lighter coloured jerseys we have the Celtic team, and the darker jerseys the Lennox Castle team. And we can also see the male attendants in their uniform and cap and moustache here, and Dr. Chislett and his assistant Dr. Curran, and also some of the patient supporters in the background.
Dr. Chislett, for example, he was the big shot, you know. And I think he looked into places as his state. I mean, it was very, very strict and very fair, he thought. But when I think back on it, he heard there was a male nurse started, it was a landscape gardener. So right away, he got him to do his garden. And 8 to 5, and 2 patients. I mean, and that was all for free. And his wife used to get into the walled garden, walk in with her oval basket and cut all the flowers and everything else she wanted. He thought it belonged to them. I mean, God Almighty.
James Lappin still lives at Lennox Castle. He comes from Shettleston in Glasgow. He first became a patient in 1925 at the age of 15, transferring to Lennox Castle in 1938.
Can you remember the day that you went into hospital?
Aye.
What happened then?
Well, see, a man came to us to lift me. That my father said that he would take me on the Saturday. I was supposed to go on the Friday to Albert, and but my father said that he would take me on the Saturday.
Right. So did you know beforehand that you were going?
No, I didn't know. I thought it was a day out.
What?
It was a school trip day, and my father says, you know, you're going out a day with me, you know, but I didn't know when I was going. So we went in the car, went to George's Square, and then we took to the train. And then he says, you sit there and I'm going to get the tickets. I thought I was going back home again, but I just come up to the sitting room and says to me, you James Lampton? I said, yes. Well, I says, she put her hand out and she says, you have to come with me. Your father's seen the doctor, Dr. Clarkson. Then he's away home now. I have to go to your mother.
So what did your father explain to you?
He never told me. Never told me.
Not very much?
No. Because I don't think he was pleased at me, but I hear at school and learned nothing, then my sister bet me, you know.
So
I knew what he's doing.
How did you feel about going into hospital at that time?
I don't know. I just spent them.
Did you feel sort of angry at all at your dad?
No.
No?
I knew what he's doing from my very much, you know. I don't think he was too pleased with, you know, me being a year at school before my sister, and she bet me.
Once in the self-contained community, the patients were given jobs in the hospital workshops, making, mending and laundering their clothes, cleaning the wards, and generally maintaining the extensive site.
What kind of regime was it for them? Was it fairly hard, would you say?
They seemed to accept the fact this was their job, you know, what they had to do in the ward, for example. That was their job. Sometimes you could say, if you don't do it right, I'll put somebody else on. That was enough, you know, they wanted to keep their job. But I never said anything about remuneration, you know. I thought it was a disgrace. We used to get 10 woodbine.
Per
person.
Per
week.
week. That was our
4 pence. Them that worked in the shops, they get double.
What happened if they didn't smoke?
I never thought that. There was no alternative. I think they sold them.
Howard talked to Margaret Scally, who came to Lennox Castle at 16 in 1968, though for the last 6 years she's been living back in Glasgow. She came back to the hospital to talk to Howard about her version of life in Lennox Castle.
And what did you do after breakfast?
We used to go to our work. I used to work in the crofters.
And what did you do there?
I used to answer phones and deliver letters to the wards.
Right. So that was quite a responsible job.
I loved that job because I used to work with June Tree and Morris here.
What about what other kinds of work? Did you ever work anywhere else?
I worked in OT. I worked in the gardens. That's about the 3 jobs I worked.
What would your wages be when you first started?
After you paid your board money, You get 23 in the Lintons. And then, if you were satisfactory after 6 months, you went through a medical and became superannuated. And they took 1 and tuppence off you then, so you're down to 22 and ninepence.
So you get less money after 6 months. You say you had to pay board. How much would you be paying in board?
It was equivalent to 26 shillings.
So more than half your wages. Did you feel that was good value?
No, it wasn't good value at all. To me, it was very, very poor. They never showed any imagination about your menu. I can remember, and we're talking about 1937, I could tell you the breakfast. You just looked at it, wakened up in the morning and said, it's Monday, it's an egg, fried egg. Tuesday with ham, Wednesday with a kipper, Thursday with a sausage, Friday with an egg. Every day, never a change.
Did you never have a chance to choose your own sort of colours? Or?
No, they just gave it out.
Did you feel bad about that at all, or did you wish you could choose some nice clothes?
I would like to choose some. I felt bad. I would like to choose some nice clothes. No wearing the old-fashioned stuff. Everybody up the road felt rotten about that. Probably had to wear it everybody else's clothes or the hospital clothes.
So, did you have sort of underwear that was your own, or was the?
No, I used to wear the ones for here. Oh, the big ones, big bloomers and that we used to wear.
So, could you go and choose your own or whatever, or were they given to you?
They were given to us.
So would they be there for you in the morning?
They used to go in they used to go in and put the underwear, the clothes in that in our beds.
And would that just be anybody's at all in the ward?
Anybody wore them.
The hospital's own archives contain a number of documents recording daily life on the wards.
There is a great many different pieces of documentary evidence available to me. One of the most obvious were the patient's case notes, although in actual fact these case notes, which document the social background and the diagnosis and admissions procedure pertaining to the patients, as well as some very bizarre three-sided photographs, weren't in fact available to the nursing staff. These were kept separate by the medical fraternity, and as I say, weren't available at ward level at all, which made things rather difficult for many of the staff on the wards who had some problems of management with people who they didn't know why they had been admitted, or their often criminal backgrounds. Do you think some of them were of normal ability?
I thought that if it hadn't been for their criminal record, I don't think they'd ever been in Lennox Castle. You could have picked up any amount in Glasgow, just the same IQ as them. See, they took them to Berlin and they examined them in Berlin, and if their IQ was slightly below, that was enough. It was one way of getting them off the streets, habitual criminal.
That would make things quite difficult for yourselves.
Yeah, aye. They got sentenced to maybe 6 months in jail and then finished up in the castle. It extended to years if they didn't run away.
We have a daily report book which tells us the staff who were on the wards, number of patients in the wards, number of patients who are out and pass, and it details again the incidents that might happen. Somebody is noisy, aggressive to a fellow patient, prescribed chlorpromazine 100 milligrams or whatever, somebody stealing, somebody refusing to eat or whatever. These are day-to-day incidents that are recorded here. What would be the main problems you would have in the wards in terms of looking after the patients?
Well, there was the usual. Sometimes a wee bit fracas with them, you know. Some of them fight with one another. Sometimes fighting with the staff, you know. It's not everything else. If you get 82 all together all the time, they must fall out.
So, what sanctions would you be able to take?
The whole thing was they always said send for more staff. When you got them, nobody ever told us.
So did you actually have to end up fighting?
No, struggling with them, putting them into bed. That was where they put you to bed. And then they were on punishment for after that. They missed their Woodbine. Get beer rations. And if they ran away, they came back and brought back, they put them into a white moleskin suit. And they kept that on for maybe 3 months. That was to try and make sure they didn't run away again. I'll try and make sure.
And did they have a name for that regime?
Well, the only name they ever had was 5 o'clock treatment. When they got up, they went out and worked, and when they come in at 5 o'clock, they went to bed.
And were they putting a diet at all?
At the beginning, they were putting a diet. Bread and tea. I don't think they mess with their porridge.
And was it something that worked at all?
I don't think it worked at all. I mean, if they wanted to run away, they'd run away. I mean, if they had enough intelligence, and you find that I'm not staying in here.
As far as the patients are concerned, I think the documentary evidence concerning them only illustrates a patient's life who might be a problem in some ways, or whose life is filled with certainly incidents that are recorded. It doesn't tell you very much about the day-to-day life of a patient.
How did you get on with the staff, the nurses?
Some staff was good and some staff wasn't.
Did you have any sort of what you would call friends among the staff?
I had a lot of friends here. Some of them.
Among the staff, but amongst the nurses?
I used to like Fiona Roberts and Bill McCune and all them. The ward I used to be in.
What about the staff you didn't go on with?
Didn't bother with them.
And why didn't you go on with them?
I was going back years and years ago when they used to all go down your knee, when we all used to go down on our knees and do the scrubbing. The short nightgowns, moleskins, and you only used to get 1 fag a day at 7 o'clock at night.
Why would you be doing this?
It's because we were bad.
And what do you mean bad?
We used to all go down the knees and do all the scrubbing when you were in punishment.
What would you describe as bad? What would be the reason for you being in punishment?
Because I was only a wee toddler. I used to be wild as what I was.
Wild? And what would you do when you were wild?
They used to put me into my bed.
What would you do? Would you try and run away, or would you break a window? Or?
I wouldn't break a window, I would run away if I was.
And did you run away at all?
No. I wouldn't run away.
Did you never feel like it?
I felt like doing it when I was here, but I wouldn't. I just felt like running away.
I was in a fortunate position to have this document passed on to me by an ex-member of staff who worked in the nursing administration at Lennox Castle Hospital. It's the old misconduct book for the male patients running from 1937 until the 70s, and it charts each individual patient's record of misconducts within the wards. For example, this particular patient, 1940, struck out at attendant when cautioned for smoking pipe at breakfast table, resistive when put to bed, used threatening and obscene language, bread and milk diet as ordered by medical officer, threw cup through window, ordered and given 3 grams of paraldehyde, threatened to blind staff with glass measure. You can see here what types of misdemeanours were punished, what the punishments were tended to be, which were usually put to bed and put in a restricted diet. Also the use of the drug paraldehyde, and the fact that
the medical officer had to be contacted to put these things in operation, and perhaps also some of the behaviour that was the staff had to contend with in the hospital. Did you have any other sort of punishment sanctions at all for anything to do with?
No, there's nothing else. No.
Any drugs?
Well, you see, when I was up there was no such thing as the drugs that they used latterly. I mean, a patient took an outburst. It's a case of just getting them down and putting them into bed. But latterly, it was drugs did it all for you. They just gave them some drugs and they were quiet.
Do you think it was better when there wasn't any?
No, I think it was better for the patients. I mean, they were quiet and docile, but it saved them getting in any trouble too, you know, fighting with other ones.
Were you in any drugs at all?
I was just on the same ones that I used to be.
Right. What's that?
And that was the Gator I used to be on, or the Merrill.
Right. Did you feel them having an effect on you?
Sometimes I used to, and we used to get Praldehyde jags.
Did you get Praldehyde?
I got it. Used to get it when I was, that day I got a bad phone call.
What was that?
My brother died.
Right.
And that's when I took a turn, and they gave me some Praldehyde to calm me down.
Right. Why were you taking Largactil and Melloral?
Been on them all my life. I've been on the tablets since I was 6 years old, and I've been on them since then. Just to try and help me to calm down and that.
This villa here is the scene of one of the infamous incidents in the history of the hospital. There was a riot in 1957.
Dr. Curran was the superintendent then, and he got patients who had been very troublesome in different hospitals, and he brought them into the castle and put them all in the one place. And it was just a powder keg. You knew, all the staff knew something would happen, and it did happen. They transferred them from a hut up to a ward, and when they got into the ward, they started right away. They broke every pane of glass in the place, urinals, everything you like to mention. And the staff had nothing to do. They had no way of getting in. They finished up when they did get in, holding the bin lid in front of them to overpower them. They'd open razors as well, you know.
The patients
had burst open and took the open razors out that we use for shaving them. And the fire brigade was sent for them. They hosed them down. There's no trouble getting it through the window. There was no glass.
There must have been a fair amount of windows.
Terrible damage.
So what was the outcome of that?
The outcome it was that 7 of them got transferred to Carstairs.
And the rest of
The rest of them were just dispersed around the ward. I think there was 20 in that ward. 20.
So was it publicised?
It was in the papers, yes. The press got it.
The riot is one of the narratives that I've recorded from most of the nurses who have worked in Lennox Castle Hospital. It was often told to new members of staff who started to work there. It also gave an insight to new nurses about what life was like and how difficult life was in the hospital and the potential dangers of the patients, working with the patients there.
The hospital grounds were strictly segregated. Women at the top of the hill, men at the bottom. The tea room halfway up marked the boundary, enforced not just for patients, but for staff too.
You said you were allowed a dance once
a week.
Right, were there strictures in that?
Well, you couldn't go up the road with them, you know what I mean?
But you were allowed freedom to dance?
Oh yes, under the supervision of the superintendent, his wife and the matron, the chief male nurse.
So you could do whatever you liked. But you weren't allowed to go beyond a certain
That's right.
place in the hospital.
The tea room.
Right.
Tea room. If you were courting a nurse, that was as far as you, the tea room, and that was the finish of it.
The tea room would be where?
In the middle of the hill. Up from the hospital section.
But, was somebody watching?
Well, I had a man on the telephones at night. Part of his job was walking about there at the witching hour, 11 o'clock.
No bribes come his way.
Yeah.
But there would be presumably quite a few romances between
There was quite a number.
nurses.
Aye. Oh, aye. I mean, most of the staff that stayed in Oval were married to nurses.
You mentioned your girlfriend Barbara.
Yeah.
When did you see her?
Oh, it's a long while.
But would you see her every day, or?
Well, no, she, you know, the dancing that you get to know her. Because she worked in the laundry and here.
And could you not see her during the day at all?
No, but she was working the laundry, and I was up in apartment 2.
Right. And were you allowed to meet at night?
No.
Why not?
I don't think we were allowed to at night.
Right. Well, so you'd maybe see her once a week, would that?
When she comes in the road to her work.
Right.
Now I come up to go to mine, apartment 2.
So was there ever a time when you hoped that you'd have a girlfriend and get married or anything?
No.
No? Did that not appeal to you? Or?
Oh, no.
How was that? Most people, you know...
Because if you marry, you're not worries. You can work and do things in the house, you know.
Did you not fancy that?
Oh, no. Just better single. Too old.
With no aspirations to a domestic life of his own, James put great value on his links with people in the world outside. Visits play a key part in the hospital's routine.
Visiting was extremely frigidly regulated, and a record was, I say, kept of everybody who came to visit a patient. We can see here that this patient in particular was visited twice a week throughout a whole decade by his mother and father. It's just a list of dates, but in many ways it's quite poignant, the loyalty that some relatives showed to a boy here who I know was extremely multiply handicapped, and it's quite poignant that his parents came up to see him so regularly and often. And we can contrast with some of the other entries here there were years between the visits from any relatives or friends.
Using oral history techniques, Howard Mitchell has constructed a picture of daily life in Lennox Castle. This is history from the bottom up, giving a voice to ordinary people. Their experiences portray Lennox Castle as a strong, impenetrable society in which people lived and worked together, their lives totally dominated by the hospital. At times in its history, patients and staff were subjected to a stern, regimented routine. The written records alone would not tell us this story. Yet it's one we need to know as we consider how social policies affect the lives of people like Colin Sproul, James Lappin, and Margaret Scally.
Disabled people, like every other person within our society, has rights. We should be given care as of right, not because somebody else feels sorry for us. We should be given a piece of equipment that we need as of right, not because somebody's run around Everest for us and raised money.
When I say to you, I believe that the National Health Service is the best in the world, I do believe that. And I think the black nurses from the Caribbean helped to make this achievement a reality, because many of us work within that health service.
There was very little external view as to what actually went on in children's homes, and people that were running children's homes, I think, were very much left to get on with it. Young people weren't listened to when they actually said they weren't happy about something or were concerned about an adult's behaviour towards them. People sort of brushed it under the carpet and sort of sent them away.
Wasn't the best of places I wanted to go, because they usually stare at you. I didn't like the place very much at all. I know I didn't like the food or the clothes, but I got on with it anyway. And I used to help them out with the clients and whatever you had to do with them.
We've all given or received care. Most of us do both. We're going to hear 4 people talking about the care they've given, received, bought and sold during their lives, and the changes they've seen in the wide range of activities that makes up health and social care. From the 1950s to the 70s, Gloria was a patient in what was then called a mental handicap hospital run by the NHS. A lot of her time was spent giving care to another patient, Muriel. Now they've both moved, but the caring friendship continues.
I used to take her around for a walk, around the grounds and over to the shop. I used to tell the staff that where I'm taking her, because they didn't mind, and I bring her back. And it's rather a shame that the hospital was taken down, although it's not a nice place at the best of times, but it was handy for the shops and taking her around grounds. I'd feed her, wash her, toilet her, brush her teeth, take her over to the daycare centre and sit with her sometimes. Then I put her to bed, then I go put her television on if she wants it on, don't you? Yeah? Then I go home about 8:15.
St. Lawrence's, where they met, was being closed down in the 70s, like other long-stay institutions, because of policy change. In the 90s, the hospital was demolished. Only 1 block remains, now offices of the local NHS trust. Gloria revisited the site with another ex-patient.
To reception now.
Yeah. It's all changed, Gloria.
These were staff residents, and there were rooms where they used to live, students, staff nurses and sisters. Most of the sisters and students. And they used to live in these, but now they're all now offices.
The walls were this big,
They're long.
as long
They're
as
long.
this. The only difference is these have got 4 blocks, and the walls
And
had
only
3.
blocks. There are only 3 blocks.
A1, A2,
And
A3. B1, B2, B3.
And
C1,
the same
all
continue.
continue until you get to G.
They were
Because
massive.
they were long, and the beds were that close together. You hadn't room for anything else. And in the daytime, you wasn't allowed to sit on your bed.
Didn't have any privacy.
No privacy, because
No
if you
curtains.
went into the bathroom, people could get into it. If you imagine being in a prison, and the prison, and the people keep coming in and out, that was just the same, and they had bars up.
Gloria was admitted in 1956, when she was 17. Although a patient, she spent much of her time voluntarily helping the staff caring for those with greater physical needs. She met and formed a special friendship with Muriel.
might have been about 57 when she actually came down from A2 to C1. She had her own high wooden chair. I think it had a table to it. It did, and she had boots with calipers, although she wasn't able to walk very well, but she was quite straight and young. I think she was about 9, 10. She had a good personality, and I think she had a good sense of humour in her, and very patient. And to me, I think that is what I call a good friend, and I think she has, you know, she had a lot of trust in me, and I did everything for her. You can have another one later on, yeah?
Gloria and Mabel were discharged into the community in the 1970s. Life for both of them was transformed.
When you come out, it's all strange and it's all different. Before I came out, I didn't speak hardly. I spoke a couple of words, and that was it. In the hospital, you couldn't say anything, because the people you knew, they couldn't either talk to you, or there was nobody to, you know, to talk to, and they would give you the answers that you want to know. So when I came out, I had to join some organisations so I could speak a bit more than I do. So I think it teaches you being outside, and I love it because I go all over the place now. I'd never been on a bus until I came out of the hospital. So I think all these things is learning.
You had to learn, didn't you?
About 10:30. Well, that's not bad, was it? No, because I went to an early working room. Yeah, I got home about 10:30.
Although they'd moved out, Muriel still lived in the hospital. Gloria then became labelled as a volunteer, some recognition for the care she continued to give.
Round about 73, I got my discharge from St Lawrence's. Then I didn't go back there, apart from going back to see Muriel. And I still kept visiting Muriel, as I said I would.
This one was taken in the hall.
That was taken in the
when they were
recreation.
having the disco.
Yeah, that's her old chair. And again, Muriel, smiling all over. That was in the ward. I had a badge on there. It says volunteer. Because I used to go as a volunteer. We had to wear the badges whenever we went up there. Sometimes I'd forget it, but not often.
Hello. Hello, Gloria.
How are you?
On your cab.
Yes, please.
Morning, Jen. It's Shirley at Life Care. Can we have a cab for Gloria to go to White Hill? Yep, that's fine. Thank you. About 10 minutes.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, yeah.
Today, Gloria first has to take a bus and then a taxi to see Muriel, who now lives with others from the hospital in a small, specialised unit, not accessible by public transport.
Well, it's country, and it's sort of a quite. I'm not saying it's not nice. It's not. It is nice, and it's nice for them to be out from the actual hospital. I mean, again, it's a shame it's rather out of the way of anywhere. I'm quite able to understand what you're saying and aware of what's been done. I'm doing much the same things, except I'm more like a mother as well as an advocate to her, because I visit her twice weekly. If I could see her every day, it would be nice as well, and do the things that I used to do with her, as putting her to bed and doing, feeding her, washing her, dressing her. Because quite often she helps herself a little bit. They see me as an advocate and a friend. I mean, I go around talking to all of them. I know all the ones that are here from the same ward as Muriel, Moira, Sybil, Helen, most of those from the same ward. And they're all wheelchair people in the same sort of position that she's in. I often help them with if they need help. So I've had the experience of lifting and with them pulling their weight. She's woken up. I quite enjoy being with them. I mean, she's quite enjoying her weight as it is now. She's doing quite well. And I'm the only one that she's got as well, so it's both ways, isn't it? Okay. You're falling asleep again. Getting tired.
When Gloria and Muriel first met in the 50s, Mavis had arrived in London. She wouldn't have known about the long-stay hospitals. She was going to train in what was seen as a more glamorous area of care, nursing in a general hospital.
I came to England in 1954. I was attending a nursing school in Kingston in Jamaica, which is just after I left school. And then there were advertisements inviting people of my age and a little bit older to come to England, post-war England, to train as nurses. It was a time when we were a part of the British Empire. We used British money, a British curriculum in schools, British language, British culture.
Over the last 10 years, West Indians have been flocking into Britain.
We boarded the ship, the Ascania. It took about 2 weeks across the Atlantic, and then on a cold, grey morning, I arrived at Southampton. The British Council did not tell us it was going to be grey weather. There was a whole range of countries represented in that hospital, and with that, a whole range of accents. There was Irish, English, Welsh, Geordie, and I remember that. I didn't understand a word that they said half the times. There was Portuguese, there was the Far East, there was Africa, and there was other Caribbean islands, and there was Jamaica, which is me. People were extremely kind when we were in uniform. We wore an outdoor navy coat, and, for example, bus conductors never charged us. They never took our monies if we had the uniform on. We were very badly paid. I was paid £6 a month. I wore that uniform with pride. I think all of us did. Out of the uniform, however, the ugly face of racism began to appear, and it filled me with a sense of shock and horror. People sometimes on the bus didn't want to sit beside you. They'd pull away or they'd move their seats. People would be quite offensive in their racist remarks. And I really couldn't believe that this was my mother country, whose invitation I followed out. And that these were the very people who were really nice to us inside the hospital and who were not so nice outside. My voyage of discovery had some built-in pain.
Like many nurses, Mavis decided to leave the hospital to work in the community as a midwife and then as a health visitor. By the 70s, new ways of integrating health and social care were being tried, and prevention and health education were on the NHS's agenda.
I delivered many babies, approximately 300 babies in my time as a midwife, up and down, both in South London and north of the river. And a lot of them were Jewish babies. Some of those were happy times. I got used to the Jewish families, and I got a little bit of knowledge about their way of life. And I think to get into one's home and deliver, because there were home deliveries in those days, that was quite nice to be part of a family and see how they interacted. As a midwife, I would have had some interaction with the health visitor, and so the seeds of health visiting in its appeal to me were already sown. I like the idea of seeing new babies and working with them until they were 5. I liked the idea of health promotion and dealing with the eradication of disease. By the way, the racism was still there. I don't want to just make it sound as though it was all hunky-dory, because don't forget that the health visitor does not wear a uniform. And so the client doesn't always know who I am when I ring their doorbell. People have said to me, I'm sorry, I don't want any Jehovah's Witnesses calling at my door, because they didn't know I'm the health visitor. The aims of the video are very simple. It is aimed at the African Caribbean community and the wider community at large, because there are people in academia, in teaching units, etc., who I'm sure will find this video very informative.
Since she retired, Mavis has continued her commitment to health education. Her voluntary work in her local community involves encouraging people to speak out about the care they need.
Because I think the answers that we give will certainly help the planners to provide a better service later on that takes on board your views and your concerns. So, what is health?
A whole range of aspects that all rolls into one. Keeping fit, you got, okay, eating right, healthy eating, exercise, physical, going to the gym. That's all part of health, isn't it?
At the moment, I am chairperson for the Association of Jamaicans. I work with the West Indian Standing Conference. There's a Nurses Association and the Jamaican High Commission. I support Youth Aid at Lewisham, and I support the Calabash Centre for the Elderly. There's a lot of voluntary work that needs to be done out there, and fulfilling roles. They may not be paid, they're voluntary roles, but they're fulfilling. We have a responsibility towards each other in a community sense to be supportive. Because I've been a nurse and because I have had those wide-ranging skills in my career, there are some instances where people are able to communicate, but not necessarily in a way that is understood. And I believe that people like myself can play a crucial role here.
Stephen has been in residential social work for over 20 years. During that time, the care provided in children's homes has come under public scrutiny, revealing some disturbing stories of abuse and neglect. Prospects is an organisation aiming to provide a very different sort of residential care. The privacy of the young people currently living there was respected during the filming.
Prospects is actually based in what was an old local authority children's home, which in many ways has reflected the whole range of fashion of residential childcare over the years. I mean, it's been I think a remand home, it's been a mother and baby unit, and towards the end of its life, which was sort of the latter part of 1992, I think it had come very much as a sort of very sad environment where youngsters who possibly didn't have any particular proactive plans drawn up for them actually came. This particular building that we're in now originally had up to 24 young people living in it. Now there's a maximum of 9, and I think that very much reflects the need to provide much more person-centred, individualised care. We're looking at a virtual one-to-one staffing ratio so that we can support the individualised care, the key worker system, but also the training and development that's offered to the staff. And it is about recognising that they are significantly involved in providing a professional service that is governed, if you like, by professional standards and professional expectations.
Prospects' policy and guidelines for use of restraint.
How familiar would you feel that you are with that document in terms of informing your own practice?
Well, I think after the 5-day training course that Prospects provided on the use of physical restraint and dealing with aggressive situation, I think most people are quite aware of what's allowed and what isn't allowed. Because when you look back into the difficult backgrounds that young people have had prior to coming to Prospects, it could make situations worse, not deliberately, but just by the way you're positioned
Prospects puts great emphasis on preparing young people for the transition to independent living. When they leave residential care, intermediate support is provided, known as outreach.
A typical outreach resource would be a normal house. It might be a semi-detached house, it might be a terraced house in one of the outlying communities close to the town centre, where youngsters actually experience of living with neighbours around them, where they still receive a great deal of one-to-one support provided by a specific outreach team. The whole notion of preparing youngsters for the process of leaving care isn't just about their ability to cope with the laundry or to budget. It's about coping with a different style of life, and in some ways coping with some of the isolation associated with them actually living in an environment that is much more individualised as opposed to one that is being part of a group.
So how do you feel about this moving on process?
I think it's going to be difficult because of the level of support I've had here, so it's a case of having to, really. So.
But you do realise that it's not going to be just a, there you go, get on with it. It will be a gradual process.
Yeah.
And we've discussed that before. And again, it's dependent on how you're getting on, and whether you're set up in work.
Yeah.
And the sort of times of day that you most likely would need that support.
Building the confidence to live independently is crucial, not only for young people leaving care.
I come from a large, extended family, and because I went to mainstream school, I didn't actually know any other disabled people. I had various interests that I wanted to, or would like to have gone on to for a career, but because of the disability, it wasn't seen as that would have been appropriate. I had a tough job getting employment, and the more times I went for interviews and didn't get jobs, the more I got depressed, and in the end I just sat on my bottom, and my knees actually seized up through lack of use, and at that point I started using a wheelchair. And luckily I fell into the CAB work, which is very much more working with people, assisting people, helping people, which I found was my niche really. I was very fortunate in the respect that the bureau that I applied to had a new manager who was very encouraging in the respect of recruiting people with disabilities. I wasn't the recipient of help at the CAB. I was actually there assisting and helping other people. And obviously that did an awful lot of good for my self-esteem. And like I said, it also made me more confident as an individual.
In the late 80s, Clive took his first holiday away from his family with a group of people with disabilities who all lived independently. A positive and inspiring experience.
So I come away and thought, in my late 20s, I should be doing something now to actually try to get my own place, my own flat, and start to build my own life, so that I wasn't going to be totally dependent on my parents for the rest of mine or their lives. I have a severe impairment, which means I need a high level of personal care. So my main priority was really that I was going to be able to receive that level of personal care. I would see struggling to put my socks on as actually disabling, even if I managed to do it. With various aids and adaptions or whatever, I could possibly manage to put my socks in, but it could take me an hour. Well, the way I see it is, I've actually got a lot more important things I could be doing in that hour that would give me more satisfaction than just being able to put my socks on. And as I got more confident through my experience at work, I decided to recruit and select my own carers.
Hello?
Hi Dave, it's only me.
Oh, hi.
I'm ready to start making tracks, okay?
Okay, around 10 minutes. Bye.
My current setup is I have 2 PAs. They work 7 days on, 7 days off, consecutive weeks. They help me with various types of personal care, helping me get up in the morning, assisting me in washing, helping me get dressed, making breakfast, and then also assisting me whether I'm going to work in the morning or if we get in the car to go to a meeting. Because I'm funded directly by the Independent Living Fund, I don't go through social services at the moment. I actually do the tax and national insurance myself. I sort out their wages myself and I pay them and make the deductions, and I deal with the tax office, etc. When you're recruiting and selecting, it's very important to bring out at the time of the interview exactly what they will be doing and what is expected and what their role is within the household.
Clive's other personal assistant, or PA, is not only a personal friend, but also works as a volunteer in the Citizens Advice Bureau he manages.
She has no priority debts at the moment. She pays all our utilities by weekly payments. Our house is already... You can be both a friend and an employee and a voluntary worker as well, all for the same people, and keep them boundaries fair. I think we've talked about them as well, and I think that helps. To constantly talk about them. If there's another little problem comes up, we actually discuss the matter and try to resolve it as best we can.
Yeah, as long as she's got no priority debt.
Personal assistant still drums up with most people that it's a secretary-based thing. Though I do feel when we everyday work as more as a personal assistant, I assist him in his life. I don't actually care for him because it drums up all sorts of care, doesn't it? Like looking after your grandmother, really. So that's why.
In terms of recruiting a PA, the most important thing for me would be that the individual's attitude was right, i.e. the enabling role, the facilitation, as opposed to the traditional carer and caring values. Somebody who has experience of the caring sector is very often indoctrinated with those traditional ideas and values which don't fit into the independent living ethos. Independent living to me means having the freedom of choice, being able to live my life how I would even if I didn't have the impairment. And that means choosing when you get up in the morning, choosing when you eat, choosing where you work if you want to work, choosing who you have relationships with, even being able to have a relationship. In a lot of residential institutions, it's not even possible to have a relationship with somebody else. I'm also gay, so that makes it even doubly impossible. So for me, independence means freedom of choice.
Just 4 stories, charting some of the changes that have taken place over the last 50 years. About 1 in every 14 people works in health or social care. About 7 million people do some unpaid caring. In all the debates about the future of our welfare state, the voices of the many different people giving and receiving care must be heard.